The alien city was broken. Once it had tall shining towers and bright lights that touched the sky, but now those towers were cracked, and the lights were gone. Dust filled the air, and the streets were empty except for a few weak figures searching for food like wild animals. Among them walked a thin alien mother. Her skin was pale and dry, her steps slow and heavy. In her arms, she carried her little child, wrapped in old cloth, the small body shaking with hunger. The child's eyes were half closed, too weak to cry anymore. The mother whispered soft words in her own language, words of comfort, though she knew they meant nothing now. Her child had not eaten in days. Each step she took felt heavier than the last, because she knew that soon she would not have the strength to carry him. But she could not stop. She had to find something, anything, to keep him alive. Around her, people passed without care. Some looked at her with pity, others with disgust. No one offered food. No one gave help. On this dying planet, everyone only thought of themselves. Hunger had made them cold and cruel. She reached the market square. Long ago, this place was full of colors and music, but now it was filled with desperate traders, shouting and fighting over scraps. Stalls stood half empty, with only dry roots and spoiled meat for sale. Prices were too high for her. She had no money left. She had already sold her necklace, her clothes, even her home. There was nothing more to give, except herself. The thought tore her apart inside, but she looked at her child and knew there was no choice. His lips were cracked, his body weak. If she did nothing, he would die before the sun rose again. Tears burned her eyes, but she swallowed her pride. She stepped forward into the market square and raised her voice. "Take me," she cried. Her voice was thin, shaking, but it carried through the crowd. "Take me and feed my child. I will serve, I will work. I will belong to whoever gives him food." For a moment there was silence. Then cruel laughter filled the air. Traders mocked her. "She is too weak," one shouted. "Not worth a single coin," another sneered. "Her bones will break in a day." The mother lowered her head, shame flooding her heart. She wanted to run, but her child stirred in her arms, too weak even to open his eyes. She stayed. She begged again. "Please, someone, anyone, feed him. Take me, do what you want with me. Just save him." Some looked away, unable to watch. Others only laughed louder. One man threw a rotten fruit at her feet. "Your child will die anyway," he said. "Why waste food?" Her legs almost gave out, but she forced herself to stand. The sound of her child's shallow breathing gave her strength. She screamed again, louder this time, though her voice cracked. "I will give myself to anyone who feeds him. Please." Then, as the laughter echoed, the crowd grew quiet. A shadow fell across the market square. A figure was standing at the edge, tall and strong. He was not like the others. His skin was different, his clothes strange, his eyes sharp and clear. A human. No one knew where he had come from. Humans were rare on this planet, seen only as travelers or soldiers of war. But this one stood silently, watching. His gaze locked on the mother, then dropped to the small child in her arms. Something in his face changed. The traders whispered among themselves. "A human? What is he doing here? Maybe he will take her. Maybe he wants her as a toy. Better him than us." The mother stared at him, fear and hope battling inside her. She expected cruelty like the others, perhaps worse. Humans were known for their strength, their power. What would he demand? What would he take? The human stepped forward. His boots hit the ground with a heavy sound, and the crowd moved aside. He stopped in front of her. His eyes were not cruel. They were calm, steady, almost sad. Slowly, he reached into his pack and pulled out something that glimmered in the dim light. Wrapped food, real food, and a small container of clean water. Without a word, he knelt in front of her and placed the food into her hands. The mother froze. Her arms shook. She could hardly believe it was real. She looked from the food to the human, waiting for him to speak, waiting for the demand, the price, the chain he would put around her neck. But the human said nothing. He only nodded toward her child, as if telling her to feed him first. The child stirred weakly, eyes fluttering open for the first time in hours. The mother's heart broke and healed in the same moment. She pressed the food to her child's lips, tears rolling down her face. The little one began to eat, slow but alive. Around them, the market watched in silence. No one laughed now. The human stood tall again, his expression unreadable. But the mother knew one thing. This man was not like the others. He had seen her pain, and instead of turning away, he had answered it. For the first time in many days, hope entered her heart. But with it came a new fear. Why had he helped her? What did he truly want? The hook was set. Suspense hung heavy in the air. The mother's hands trembled as she fed her child the precious food, piece by piece, almost afraid it would vanish if she blinked. She had lived with hunger for so long that the taste of real nourishment seemed like a dream. Her child's lips moved weakly, chewing, swallowing, and for the first time in days, color returned faintly to his face. Tears slid down her cheeks as she whispered to him, thanking every star in the sky for this moment. Around her, the crowd muttered in low voices. They had expected the human to chain her, to drag her away like property, to treat her like all the others who traded in pain and suffering. But he had done nothing like that. He had given freely, without words, and then stood there, calm and silent, as if daring anyone to stop him. The mother looked up at him, confusion swirling with fear. In her world, nothing was free. Everything had a price, especially mercy. She rose slowly, her knees weak, and clutched her child close. With trembling lips she whispered, "What do you want from me?" Her voice was low, but in the silence of the market square, every ear caught it. The human did not answer immediately. His eyes moved across the broken stalls, the watching faces, the ruined city. For a moment, it seemed as if he was seeing something far away, something the others could not see. Then he looked back at her and shook his head. "Nothing," he said simply, his voice steady, calm, and carrying weight. The single word struck her harder than any demand. Nothing? How could that be? She could not believe it. Desperation made her heart beat faster. She had offered herself as a servant, as a slave, ready to suffer for the sake of her child. And now this man claimed he wanted nothing? She felt her throat tighten as she asked again. "You gave us food, but what must I do for you? You own me now." She thought he would laugh or grow angry, or maybe show his true colors. But he did not. He stepped closer, and his voice grew softer. "I do not own you," he said. "Feed your child. Rest. You are free." Her mind could not accept it. On this dying planet, where cruelty was the only language people spoke, this human spoke words that did not belong. Free? No one was free. She clutched her child tighter, backing away slightly, waiting for the trick, the hidden price. The traders watched, whispering louder now. Some spat in disgust. "Humans are fools," one hissed. "He pays and asks for nothing." Another shook his head. "No one is that kind. He must want her later." Their voices crawled into her ears, feeding her doubt. Yet when she dared to look at him again, she found no hunger or cruelty in his gaze, only a tired sadness, as if he had seen too much of the same suffering. The human moved again, and this time he opened his pack wider. He placed more food on the broken stall beside her, and then a blanket clean and strong, something she had not touched in years. He poured water into a small cup and pushed it toward her child. "He needs this," the human said quietly. "Let him drink." His tone was not commanding, not like a master to a slave, but gentle, like one who cared. The mother's eyes filled again with tears. Slowly, she obeyed, lifting the cup to her child's lips. The boy drank greedily, his small hands clutching hers, and the sound of his swallowing felt to her like music. The human waited until the child finished. Then he said, "You will stay safe tonight. I will watch." That was all. No chains, no orders, no cruel demands. Just a promise. The mother could not stop her heart from racing. Why would he do this? Why for her? She was nothing, broken, a shadow of the woman she once was. She had offered herself in shame, and instead of being taken, she was being lifted. The thought terrified her as much as it comforted her. When the crowd began to break apart, muttering and shaking their heads, the humans stood like a wall, making sure no one dared to approach her. Traitors who had mocked her earlier now looked away. Some feared him, for humans were known to be strong fighters, dangerous even when alone. But this one had shown no violence, only quiet strength. They could not understand him, so they left. The mother sat on the ground with her child, wrapping him in the blanket, watching the human as he stood guard near the edge of the square. She thought about running, escaping before his true demands appeared. But she knew she could not while her child was so weak. And perhaps, in some hidden corner of her heart, she did not want to run. There was something in his presence that felt different, something she had not felt in years. Safety. Night fell slowly. The ruined city grew darker, the air colder. Fires burned in broken barrels as other families huddled together, whispering in the shadows. The mother stayed close to her child, who now slept with a full stomach, breathing more easily than before. Every time she looked at him, relief washed over her like a wave. She glanced toward the human, who stood with his arms crossed, scanning the streets with calm, sharp eyes. He did not sleep. He did not speak. He only kept watch, as though her life and her child's life mattered more than his own rest. For the first time in her long, desperate struggle, she wondered if the universe still held kindness. She wondered if maybe, just maybe, this human was not here to take, but to give. But why? What pain lived inside him that made him act this way? And what would happen when the rest of the world noticed? The mother did not know, but as she lay with her child in her arms, the warmth of the blanket around them, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. And yet, deep inside, a fear remained. Nothing in her world came without a cost. If the human claimed he wanted nothing, then the question would haunt her through the night. What would he reveal tomorrow? The following days were unlike anything the alien mother had expected. She woke each morning expecting to see the human gone, leaving her and her child to face the hunger of the city once again. Yet every time her eyes opened, he was still there. Sometimes he sat by the edge of the ruined square, sharpening a blade or cleaning a small piece of equipment from his pack, and other times he walked slowly through the broken streets, watching the shadows where trouble often lived. But he always returned before nightfall, and each evening, he brought something with him: food, water, or blankets taken from places she did not know. He never asked for thanks. He never gave commands. He only placed the supplies before her and said the same words every time: for the child. At first, the mother remained fearful. She believed this was only a trick, that sooner or later the human would show his true purpose. She wondered if he was only fattening her child before taking him, or if he wanted to gain her trust before demanding her servitude. Yet no demand came. Instead, when her child woke crying in the night, the human crouched beside them and offered him a small carved toy he had whittled from a piece of scrap wood. The boy's trembling hands held the toy, and for the first time, laughter broke through the silence. It was weak, but it was laughter, and it made the mother's heart ache with forgotten joy. She looked at the human then, and for the first time she did not see danger. She saw a man who had chosen to care. Days stretched into weeks. The mother began to notice things about him that others ignored. His eyes carried a weight, as if he had seen too much loss. His voice, though steady, sometimes softened when he spoke to her child, almost like he was speaking to someone from his past. He never spoke about himself, but his silences spoke louder than words. She knew this man had been hurt by life, perhaps as deeply as she had. And in that quiet understanding, a fragile bond began to form between them. The child grew stronger. Each day he could walk a little farther, play a little longer, and smile a little wider. His skin no longer looked pale, and his laughter grew louder in the ruined streets. He clung to the human's hand more often than to his mother's, which made her heart heavy and light at the same time. She feared losing her child's love, but she also knew the boy's heart was wise. He did not cling to strangers. He clung to those he trusted, and somehow, this human had earned his trust faster than anyone. One afternoon, when the sun burned weakly through the haze of dust, the mother finally asked the question that had haunted her since the first night. "Why are you doing this?" Her voice carried a mix of suspicion and hope, and her hands shook as she asked it. The human did not answer at once. He looked out over the ruined city, his jaw tightening, his eyes shadowed by something she could not name. At last he said, "Because once I had a child too. He is gone now. I will not watch another child die if I can stop it." His words fell heavy in the silence, and for a moment the mother forgot her fear. She saw his pain, raw and unhidden, and it pierced her heart. She reached out, her hand trembling, and touched his arm. It was the first time she had dared to touch him. "I am sorry," she whispered. The human only nodded, as if he had no strength left for more words. That night she looked at him differently. Not as a master, not as a stranger, but as someone broken like herself. Perhaps that was why he understood her better than anyone else. The people in the city began to notice. They whispered when the human walked by with the alien mother and her child at his side. Some mocked her, calling her weak for relying on an outsider. Others warned her to be careful, saying no human could be trusted. But she ignored them now. She knew cruelty well, and the human had shown her nothing of the sort. If there was danger in him, it was not for her. As the bond grew, so did the danger. Traders began to notice the child's health returning, his strength rising. Rumors spread that the boy could be sold for a high price to scientists or warlords who wanted to use alien children for cruel experiments. One night, a shadow crept too close to their small shelter, and the human rose instantly, blade flashing in the firelight. The intruder fled, but the warning was clear. Someone wanted the boy. The mother's fear returned, but this time it did not crush her. Instead, she turned to the human and asked, "Will you protect him?" He looked at her with eyes hard as steel and answered, "With my life." The weight of those words settled into her chest like a promise. For the first time in many years, she believed she and her child might survive, not because she had sold herself, but because someone had chosen to stand beside her freely. The bond between them was no longer only survival. It was something deeper, fragile but strong, like a thread of light weaving through the darkness. The alien mother had begun to hope again, though fear still whispered in her ear. She knew the world would not allow such peace to last. And yet, she could not let go of the strange human who had given her child laughter again. The story of a mother who had once sold herself to save her child was slowly changing. She was no longer a slave. She was becoming something else, part of a family that was beginning to form in the ashes of a broken world. The city had grown more restless with every passing day. Hunger made people desperate, and desperation made them cruel. The alien mother could feel the shift in the air whenever she walked with her child beside the human. The stares were no longer just curious. They were sharp, calculating, filled with envy and greed. Whispers followed them through the streets, whispers about the boy who had grown stronger and healthier, about the woman who now walked with hope instead of shame, about the human who gave food as if it appeared from nowhere. Rumors spread like fire, and soon, danger began to close in on them. One evening, as the weak sun dipped behind the ruined towers and shadows stretched long across the square, the human returned later than usual. His face was tight, his jaw set, and though he carried food in his pack, his eyes looked as if he had just walked out of a storm. The mother noticed at once. She had learned to read his silence. Something was different. After her child fell asleep, wrapped in the blanket and breathing softly, she sat across from him by the dim firelight and spoke in a steady voice. "You hide something. You carry a weight I cannot see. Tell me why you are here. Tell me who you truly are." For a long moment he said nothing. He sat with his back against the broken wall, his hands resting on his knees, his eyes fixed on the flames. The firelight flickered across his scarred face, showing lines carved deep by years of pain. At last he spoke, his voice low and heavy, carrying truth that seemed to bend the silence around them. "I am not a traitor. I am not a wanderer. I was a soldier." The mother froze. She had feared this answer, but still the sound of it shook her. Soldiers were killers, destroyers. They were the reason her world had fallen into ruin. She wanted to pull her child closer, to shield him, but the human continued before she could move. "I fought in the war that burned across the stars," he said. "I carried weapons, I wore armor, I followed orders that sent men and women to die. I believed I was fighting for peace, but when the war ended, there was no peace. There was only loss." His eyes softened as he looked at her sleeping child. "I had a family once, a child of my own. But war takes everything. I could not save them. And when the fighting was done, I was left with nothing but guilt and silence. So I wandered. I thought maybe I would die quietly on some forgotten world." He paused, and his voice broke for the first time. "And then I saw you." The mother's breath caught. Her fear twisted into something else. His words were raw, carved out of old wounds, and in them she heard no lies. He had not come to chain her. He had come because he recognized her pain as his own. She felt her chest tighten with emotions she did not understand. "You saw me begging in the square," she whispered. "And you remembered your own child." The human nodded. "I could not walk away. I saw death in your arms, and I swore I would not fail again." Silence settled between them, heavy but no longer cold. The mother looked at him differently now. The soldier she had feared was not a monster but a man broken by war, carrying scars too deep for anyone else to see. He had saved her and her child not for power, not for control, but because he carried the ghost of his own loss inside him. Yet the revelation brought no peace. That night, before the fire burned out, movement stirred in the shadows beyond the wall. The human rose at once, silent and sharp, his blade glinting in the faint light. Figures crept closer, their voices low and cruel. The traitors had returned, but this time they did not come to laugh. They had heard the rumors about the child, about his health and strength, and they wanted him. The mother's heart froze with terror as she pulled her son into her arms, pressing his face into her chest to block out the sight. The men circled, their eyes hungry, their hands reaching. "The boy will fetch a good price," one hissed. "Give him to us, human, and you can keep the woman. We know you don't care about her. Just step aside." The human stepped forward, blocking their path, his body a shield between the mother and the men. His voice was steady but dangerous, carrying the cold weight of a soldier who had faced worse than this. "You will not touch them." The intruders laughed, but their laughter was thin. They had seen the way he moved, the way he carried himself, and they recognized the shadow of war in his eyes. Still, hunger made them bold. One lunged forward, and in a single swift motion, the human struck him down. His blade cut through the night air, and the others froze, suddenly unsure. The mother clutched her child tightly, her heart racing. Fear burned inside her, but it was not fear of the human. It was fear of losing him. He had revealed who he was, and now she saw the truth with her own eyes. He was not only a protector. He was a warrior, one who would spill blood if it meant saving them. The men retreated into the shadows, cursing and swearing to return. The humans stood still, watching until the last sound of their footsteps faded. Then he wiped his blade clean and returned to the fire without a word. The mother could not speak. She looked at him, her heart torn between fear and gratitude. He had shown her the truth, both the broken man and the dangerous soldier. And yet, she knew one thing more clearly than ever before. Her child was alive tonight because of him. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "You did not fail this time." The human glanced at her, his face unreadable, but in his eyes she saw something stir, something fragile, something like hope. And in that moment, as the fire burned low and the night pressed close, the alien mother realized that her fate and her child's fate were bound to this human, not by chains, but by a promise stronger than steel. The night after the attack weighed heavy on the mother's heart. She held her child close while the fire burned low, and though her body begged for rest, her mind would not let her sleep. Every sound beyond the crumbling walls sent waves of fear through her. She knew the traitors would not stop. They had seen her boy's strength, and greed had carved its way into their hearts. To them, her son was not a child, he was a prize, something to be stolen and sold. She looked at the human, who sat awake as always, sharpening his blade in the glow of the dying fire. His face was calm, but his eyes were hard, filled with the certainty of someone who had already chosen his path. He would fight. He would protect. He would stand even if it cost him his life. The following day confirmed her fears. Whispers spread quickly through the ruined streets, whispers of a price placed on her son's head. People who had once ignored her now stared too long, their eyes calculating. Mothers pulled their children closer as she passed, and traitors followed at a distance, watching, waiting for their chance. The mother clutched her son tightly and hurried back to the small shelter where the human stood waiting. He listened in silence as she told him what she had heard. When she finished, he said only one thing: "They will come tonight." Her heart sank. She looked at him, searching for answers, but his face gave none. Still, when he turned his eyes to hers, she felt a quiet strength flow into her, steady and unshakable. He was not afraid. He was ready, and somehow, that gave her the strength to stand beside him instead of collapsing under the weight of fear. That night came fast. The stars were hidden behind the haze, and the air carried a chill that cut through their clothes. The boy slept peacefully, unaware of the danger creeping closer. The mother stood near him, her body tense, her heart pounding, while the human prepared. He set traps at the edges of the square, silent wires and sharpened stakes hidden in the rubble. He placed broken metal where the light would catch it, creating illusions of weapons and soldiers waiting. He moved with the precision of a man who had done this many times before, and the mother realized she was watching not just a wanderer, not even just a soldier, but a warrior. When the traitors came, they came in numbers. Shadows spilled into the square, moving like wolves, their voices low but filled with greed and hunger. "Give us the boy," one growled. "Step aside, human. You cannot fight us all." Another sneered, raising a blade that caught the faint firelight. "Take the woman if you want, but the boy is ours." The human stepped forward, placing himself between the intruders and the mother. His voice carried across the square, steady and cold as iron. "You will not touch them." The battle that followed was brutal. The first man lunged, only to be caught by one of the hidden traps. His scream tore through the night, sending fear through the others. But greed made them reckless, and they rushed together. The human moved like a storm, his blade flashing, his body strong despite the odds. Each strike was precise, each step measured, and for every man that came at him, another fell. Blood stained the dust, and the cries of the traitors filled the square. The mother could do nothing but watch at first, clutching her son, her heart breaking as she saw the human fight alone. But when one of the traitors slipped past the chaos and reached for her child, something inside her snapped. With a cry that shook her own voice, she threw herself at the man, biting, clawing, striking with every ounce of strength left in her. She had been weak for so long, but in that moment, the strength of a mother's love burned brighter than her fear. The human saw her struggle and, with a swift strike, ended the threat. When their eyes met, she saw pride in his gaze, pride and something deeper, something that felt like family. The fight dragged on, but the human never faltered. His body was cut and bruised, his breath heavy, but he stood tall until the last of the traitors fled into the night, cursing his name and vowing revenge. Silence returned to the square, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the quiet sobs of the mother as she held her child safe in her arms. The human stood, blood on his hands, exhaustion in his eyes, but still alive. He looked at the mother and her child, and for the first time since she had met him, a faint smile touched his lips. "They will not return soon," he said softly. "But even if they do, they will never take him from you." The mother rose slowly, her legs trembling, and walked to him. She touched his arm gently, her eyes filled with tears that were not only of fear but of gratitude and love. "You saved us," she whispered. "You gave us life when I had nothing left. You gave him hope, and you gave me something I thought I had lost forever, a family." The child stirred then, his small voice breaking the silence as he reached out to the human. With sleepy eyes, he spoke a single word that shattered the walls around their hearts. "Father." The human froze, his breath catching, and for a long moment he could not speak. Then he knelt, taking the boy into his arms, holding him close with a tenderness that spoke of all the love he had lost and all the love he had found again. The mother watched them, her heart aching and healing at the same time, and in that moment, she knew her life had changed. She had sold herself in desperation, expecting chains and cruelty, but instead she had found a man who gave her freedom, a child who had found a father, and a bond that no hunger or cruelty could break. The ruined city whispered of the strange story, the alien mother who had tried to sell herself, the human who bought her but chose love instead, and the family they had built in the ashes of despair. And though the world around them remained broken, inside their small circle of firelight, there was hope. Hope born not of power, not of wealth, but of love that crossed worlds.